Hey everyone, and welcome back to another King Arthur Legends Rise video. So today's video, guys, I want to talk about the most efficient characters in the game up to this point and within my knowledge. So this is, my opinion. Take it with a grain of salt. If you have other heroes that I've missed on here that you think you can just use everywhere and I'm kind of sleeping on, please, put it in the comments below. I'd like to test them out, give them a go, see if you guys are right. So, the criteria that I have for this is the heroes need to be used in almost all of these dungeons. Like, they can be used anywhere. Now, there might be one or two that they're not good in. Like, Gorgos is pretty specific with damage over time stuff. Some of these equipment dungeons have, some unique, mechanics to them as well. So that might be a little limited, but overall, they are just extremely strong, and you can use them in every bit of content outside of like maybe 10 or 15% of the content. So I will be mentioning, some of the chivalries because it does play into this list. Like if you have extra copies of the hero, their power level just skyrockets. So with that being said, let's kind of start with our first hero. And our first hero is Bedivere. For anyone who's played the game for a little bit, or if you're just starting and you're kind of looking around at tier lists, or you're watching videos of people saying how broken this character is, it's kind of true. He is extremely strong. He is like miles ahead when it comes to damage output in comparison to other heroes. And I don't know why he scales so much better than the others. Like his passives and his skill multipliers, they are high, but it's not like they're so much higher than other people that should be good damage dealers. So I don't know if percentages really matter that much, but it seems to. But Bedivere is just an absolute tank. You do need to skill up his first passive, which there is a way to do that. For those of you who don't know, there's a lot of videos out there on YouTube. But if you have a hero that's less than level 20, their other passives will not unlock until you get them up to a certain level. So if you unlock 3 stars, which allows Ain to go up to level 30, she'll then unlock her second passive. And if you unlock her 5 stars to go up to level 50, she'll unlock the third. So if you have a skill level up with these talismans, you can skill her up. And because these other 2 are unlocked, these will be the only thing that get a skill up. Because if all 3 are unlocked, it's completely random. Now, when you're starting out, the talismans are pretty hard to come by. But if you farm the story mode and you get 3 stars on all the levels, eventually these selector chests will be towards the end of those certain chapters where you're able to get these and kind of target some legendaries early that you might not have been able to level up because you haven't progressed far enough into the game yet where these legendary talismans drop. So that's just a little, tip for you guys if you haven't known about it. But that's what I did to my Bedivere. I waited until I had enough of these because he was the first legendary champion I pulled, from shards. Because when I started the game, he was one of the heroes on the banner that was available to us. So yeah, that's why I did that. So yeah, he's just miles ahead. But this first passive, if you have Chivalry 1, so I had 2 copies, his dominant position usually ignores 10%, but if you have an additional copy, it then ignores 20%. So if you're going up against a boss or an enemy that, only has 1 target, because some of the bosses have like claws or tusks, like they have appendages, this hits really hard. Sometimes if you get lucky enough and the randomness targets the one enemy or the one appendage of the boss, it'll completely KO it on the first hit. It's crazy. The damage multiplier is pretty good, but the ignoring 20% of the defense is very strong. His other passive here, Light of Dusk, is also very good. So it has a 50% chance to trigger, and you can actually skill it up to 100%. So whenever he crits, he decreases your passive cooldowns by a turn. And this goes down to 1 turn. So like you're just looping back around to this a lot faster. to have his damage output be insane. And then this last one's not really great. So if you wanted to be super efficient with your Bedivere, you would wait until he's level 20, level this up, and then get him to level 50, level this up, and then level him to level 60. Because this is, whatever. You never use skill 3, really. So let's talk about his skills on his relic. He has this on his attack 2, which is the one that you're going to be using the most. He gains critical strike rate increase 2. So this is your crit rate, and it's increased by 40%. Each increase, I believe, is 20%. So he only needs to be built with like 60% crit rate because you're always going to be using this. And he deals 140%. But if the last hit is a critical strike, he deals in another 140. Now, I ticked this up, so I think it was like 126. But yeah, this thing hits really hard. So if you use this, you're doing 280 damage, and then you're going into his passive, which is doing another 110%. And then this one ignores 20% of defense. So it's just like spirals out of control. His third ability is pretty good. It ignores 5% of defense, and it attacks all enemies for a pretty high multiplier. And then his skill 1 gives him a crit rate up 2 as well. But it's only a 60% chance where this is guaranteed. So, yeah, just miles ahead. I use Bedivere everywhere. If you have him, you're going to use him everywhere other than somewhere like Gorgos. And you can even use him in there like early when you don't have the right DOT champions or whatever and you just want to farm it quick. You can. But I use him in Frozen Plain. I even use him in Shrine of Storms where he is a weak element. He's obviously amazing in all of these equipment dungeons against these bosses. Great in Clan Raid, Forbidden Dungeon. He's your sole, damage dealer. He can basically solo his own dungeon in here in Crow. Yeah, and then he's the main damage dealer for me in Sealed Temple. So that one's no surprise, but I did want to mention him. Now, the other heroes that I want to talk about. Guys, if you are sleeping on Tristan, you need to stop sleeping on Tristan. He is so good. I think people just have this mindset of he is a free hero, so he can't be that good. Trust me, he is. First things first. His passive abilities, very, very strong and high multipliers. Now, I also have an additional copy. I have 2 additional copies, actually, but the second copy just gives him stats. The first copy changes his first passive to anytime he attacks, where before, I believe, the enemy has to have protection up. Now, protection is one of these things. A couple of the bosses that I'm going to show, they have protection, so this passive triggers a lot. And even though it has a 5-turn cooldown, his second passive reduces the amount of time, the cooldown turns on all of your passives. So high damage multiplier, and then if you have him Chivalry 1, this protection, if you're attacking someone that has protection, it gives himself crit damage increase 2 for a turn, which is 40% increase. So his next hit is going to smack. It's really awesome. This is the passive that reduces his cooldowns if he attacks someone with protection. And then this one's also very good. When he attacks, it's on a 5-turn cooldown. He recharges his attack gauge by 30%. However, it can book up to 60%, which is nuts. And he gains attack speed increase for the rest of the battle. Like, he's very fast. If you have the ability to get 8 copies of him, he then charges by 80%. And he adds an additional attack now that is a 5-hitter, which is 100% attack. And I know what you're thinking. It's like, oh, wow, when am I ever going to get 8 of a legendary? Wouldn't you know it, you can actually farm copies of Tristan. I believe it's in the Colosseum. It's either Colosseum or... No, it's in the Colosseum. So, yeah. And this might take you a while, but you can farm 2 of these things a week. Now, you're probably going to farm one once a month, but there's a couple things in here that you want to buy beforehand. Not saying you should buy the things that I bought, but yeah, you can farm him. So you can farm additional copies. And once you get him to Chivalry 8, like, things just going to spiral. But the whole reason why I think he's so efficient is, one, he's got a bunch of multi-hitters, which is great for, playing a beast. He's got really good damage. And he is one of the few heroes in this game that have something called attack speed down. Now, the other ones in here are commons and uncommons. There is a rare, but you need a different relic than when you get him from a summon. But Tristan comes with a baseline. He has attack speed decrease 2 for 2 turns at an 80% chance on his first hit. This is so important for bosses. Bosses have a lot of attacks. They usually scale in damage the weaker they get. Like, the more HP they take, the more damage they put out. So if you have the ability to slow down the amount of turns that the boss has, you're severely underestimating this. He also has a pretty good damage dealing ability here on his third attack, which puts attack speed decrease 1. These two things stack, attack speed decrease 1 and attack speed decrease 2. So very, very good abilities. His other relics are also very good. Like, his fire relic is amazing. His fire relic has an 8-hitter, which is great, and it has a 100% chance to charge his attack gauge by 30%. You can even boost it up to 40%. So that's fantastic. Gives himself attack speed increase. Also, you see, like, the additional damage for enemies that had protection. Absolutely insane. The bosses that have protection are the Shrine of Storms and Plane of Beasts. I think Frozen Plain might have it, and certainly one of the equipment dungeons have it as well. So, yeah, Tristan, literally fantastic everywhere. He's super underrated, and you get him for free. And you can farm not only his relics, but you can also farm his weapon. So you can farm his flame relic right here. His frost relic, I don't think is anything to write home about, but the flame relic you can also farm. So, yeah, guys, trust me, you're sleeping on Tristan. Use him everywhere. He is fantastic. If you think, like, oh, I don't have a team to beat this, try Tristan. Okay? All right. Third one, Morgan. I think everyone knows about this. I'll kind of fly through her. She's got amazing skill 2, removing buffs, reducing attack gauge. Absolutely fantastic. And then her third passive is the best damage dealing support passive in the entire game. It's absolutely amazing. If you get her to Chivalry 3, that passive unlocks on any attack that she does, where baseline you have to use her skill 1. You can also get the cooldown to this to 2 turns and increase the defense decrease and damage taken to 2 turns instead of 1, which really helps whenever you're trying to, like, speed tune and things like that. This is a game changer. You can cheese a lot of dungeons by having this skill with someone like Bedivere, right? Where you're just pumping out so much damage. You can, like, one-shot bosses. It's nuts. But, yeah, I think this one's pretty straightforward. There's so many different, videos out there talking about how amazing Morgan is and how she should be the first legendary you level up. And I agree. Although I think she's good at level 50 just because she can put out damage, but I think a lot of the time she is just a support hero. She's enabling your damage dealers and reducing attack gauge. Like, you kind of want to build her with a little bit of effect accuracy, where Tristan, on the other hand, really needs level 60 because he's a damage dealer, so he needs his attack stats to be high. So, but yeah, Morgan, fantastic support. Her other relics are really good too. Like, don't sleep on these. If you're able to pull, the Storm or the Frost relic, she becomes viable probably in, again, 95% of all of the dungeons. Because she's fire, she's a little weak in the Frozen Plains, which is a bit of a bummer because this is a very important dungeon. But yeah, if you pull her Frost or her Storm, like, you can certainly use her there because her passives always carry over. It doesn't matter if it's her relic. All right, next, Merlin. I had an individual video on Merlin. Absolutely fantastic. If you are if you have a healer, a damage dealer, and Morgan in your team, you're like, man, who do I put in? Put in, put in Merlin. I guarantee you pass the dungeon. He has the ability to change weather, which is pretty big. Although it's just on his skill 2, and it's only once unless you book this up. I don't know if you should, but anyway, it's still nice to have. Because if you missed my previous video, I talked about how important weather is, and I really think you should utilize heroes that can change the weather and focus certain teams based around those characters. So yeah, he changes the weather. He's able to give yourself vigor, and then if on his baseline relic here, not his relic, his passive here, anytime you use a skill 3, you give yourself defense increase 2 and recovery over time. Very, very strong. So Merlin is like a jack of all trades, but master of none. He gives you healing. He gives you buffs. He gives you a specific debuff that charges your attack gauge. He can control enemies with freezes. It's really good. And I think he's the only hero in the game that I know of that has a revive of all of your allies. I will say that this passive, though, is kind of a bait. You would think it's better than it is, but it really doesn't come up. And even whenever you revive the heroes, a lot of times they're just going to die right away because they get revived with nothing and no like attack gauge meter or anything like that. His baseline relic really good. I've talked about this frozen remains debuff that you put up on the boss. It gives your whole team damage over time immunity. He is one of the heroes that you can actually 3-man Gorgos with. Because Merlin will go, put that frozen remains debuff up on Gorgos, and then the next people that attack him get DOT immunity, and it's just like that the entire game, and Gorgos can't really do a whole lot of damage to you outside of DOTs. So yeah, Merlin, just absolutely fantastic hero. Like I said, he's kind of a jack of all trades. So if you're looking for that flex spot and you have Merlin, you really should test him. Okay, now we're done with legendaries. I think some of those were mainly really cut and dry and like obvious. But now for some rares. So the first one is Rosier. Now, there's a lot of videos out on YouTube talking about how the Fire Relic is absolutely amazing. She's S tier. She has this because her damage is absolutely insane, 355%, blah, blah, blah. True. Very, very good. I don't even have it yet, but I use her in her Frost Relic and her Storm Relic. Her abilities here, these AoEs, at least on the Storm, oh yeah, and on the Frost, these should not be do not undervalue those, okay? There's a bunch of dungeons where the bosses have like a resistance to damage over time, right? But their appendages don't. That's something that you really need to pay attention to, or at least it didn't seem like they did. Hold on, I should check that before I spread that. It might be fake news. Let's see here. Do they have DOT immunity? No, see? Yeah, so here, they do not have the passive that this boss has, which is DOT take and decrease by 90%. The appendages don't. So DOT on appendages of bosses are really key. On top of that, Rosier's like AoE abilities hit really hard. She hits real hard. Another thing that people don't realize in games like this, because usually DOTs, damage over time effects, usually just have like a tick of percentage from HP. However, at least in my opinion, I haven't seen this in other games that I've played, the DOTs in this game actually have other effects too. So damage taken by 2%. Like if you're going up against a boss that has that effect of damage over time is reduced by 90%, the damage taken still affects it. So if you have multiple stacks of bleed on a boss that has a DOT, damage negation, they're still taking an additional 2, 4, 6% of damage that they wouldn't have been before. So on these bosses that are really tanky, have high defense, a lot of HP, sometimes you shouldn't underestimate these bleeds. Now, I'm pretty sure she has bleed on all of these. She might have burn here. No. Yeah, so she has bleed everywhere. But yeah, I don't want you to underestimate the power of bleed. She also has some really amazing, like, chivalries. So if you have these memory stones for rares, she could be a viable candidate because I really use her everywhere. She was someone that I didn't think I could utilize outside of Burning Land, but I've seen her in Plane of Beasts because she has multi-hitters, especially with her fire relic, which I don't have yet. That's probably why I don't use her there. But Frozen Plain is where I've used her for stage 7. I've used her in this team to beat this. And I was just like, man, my Bedivere isn't getting it done, yada, yada, yada. And then I brought in her, and she made me pass it. So, yeah, consistently at least. Bedivere wasn't. So, yeah, do not sleep on Rosier. All of her elemental relics are fantastic, too. So if you're lucky enough to pull them, yeah, you can use her in basically any kind of dungeon. Next up, Turin. I was sleeping on this hero for sure, but after I kind of dove in a little bit more into weather, which she changes on her passive, which is huge, you know. This is on her Chivalry 1, so you do need 2 additional copies. So whenever she comes into play, she makes it Night and Rain. But she turns into an amazing healer. An amazing healer on all of her relics. It doesn't matter which one it is. Getting that recovery over time, you know, these buffs also are very good. Defense increase, effect accuracy. This is usually really hard for new players to hit, you know, to land debuffs on bosses. Having Turin in there to land those is amazing. She also can give you some cool effects on fire, which have come into play for me on some of the gear dungeons. Your evasion rate and effect resistance also going up. Very, very strong. So yeah, just a fantastic character. You know, changing the weather to increase speed, crit damage, damage taken, you know, for your heroes is really good already. And then on top of that, being able to have just really good damage over time, recovery over time, along with 2 relevant heals, two relevant buffs on her attack 2, and then she gets really good buffs on her 3rd attack as well on all of these relics. So yeah, do not sleep on her. She is, man, it's hard to say if she's like the best healer because her raw healing isn't great, but everything else she brings with the weather and those other buffs, it's like she's a great healer support. So yeah, like it's just hard to characterize her, but absolutely fantastic. Do not sleep on her. Again, like this is another one of those heroes, Turin and Tristan. Like you think, oh, the game gave them to me, so they're probably not great. No, they scale. They can scale all the way up. Trust me. Utilize those heroes. All right, next is Sarah. Sarah is an amazing character. I don't know why I can't find her right now. Rare Sarah. She's right here. Yes. Sarah, unlike Turin, is just a great raw healer. She has good multipliers on her like HP recovery. She removes debuffs from allies on her attack 2. She also gives a defense increase 1, as well as like a really high percentage of her HP, and then she also heals on her attack 1. Now, one of the things that makes Sarah really good is she is one of the few heroes in this game that has something called buff disruption, which is basically block buffs. She also has an attack gauge disruption on her passive. So whenever she uses her skill 1, and you can skill this up, and I'm hoping to do that here soon. Actually, I might be able to do it right now. Yeah. This is also okay, like removing 2 debuffs, but hopefully I get on the third one. Nice. Okay, so now this is a 1-turn cooldown. So I can block buffs and I can block attack gauge. So if you run into a boss that's trying to boost its attack gauge meter, because some of the power-up dungeons have that, Sarah blocks it with her skill 1, where she's also healing. So she is an amazing, amazing character. She's good in all areas, seriously. With her being a rare, having, the ability to cycle through each individual element, I think is a huge game changer too. It's so hard to get legendary relics for your legendary heroes, where it's quite easy to get the relics that you need for, rare characters. If you just go to the shard shop, every once in a while you'll see, a decent relic in here for, one of the heroes that you're using where you need a positive element. So that goes a long way. I'm still looking for Sarah's other relics, but right now she's still even being utilized with her storm relic. If you guys are struggling on the gear dungeon that drops speed and attack, you can try and cheese it with this skill 1 buff disruption. This boss, you're supposed to use marks, and I do on my team because I have Sigrun, and I also have her Chivalry 3. So, but if you don't have that, you can use someone like Sarah to go in and block those buffs, because this boss goes absolutely bonkers with buffs. Like he puts up he puts up a bunch of buffs on his on some of his attacks. Defense increase, attack speed increase, damage taken decrease, attack speed increase, defense increase. He also gives himself like evasion and stuff. Yeah, it's pretty nuts. So yeah, you can kind of cheese that with Sarah. So great heals, and then she's one of the few people that have, block buffs. Don't sleep on that. And then last but not least, guys, is Cormac. This guy, like, if you do not have Bedivere, right? If you don't have Bedivere, and you're progressing through the game right now, you have people like Tristan and Morgan and Kay, right? Kay's probably your main damage dealer. And she's very strong. I left her off this list just because I think she's more of just like a damage dealer. And if you have a other damage dealer, she's just not going to be used. But she is strong, and I think you should build her. She's, a free rare. You get her early, and she's going to help you in a lot of content. But when you're going up against fire enemies, if you have the ability to have Cormac with his Frost Relic, this guy's damage is absolutely insane. It's insane. It's AoE damage. He has this really interesting mechanic. He has it on his base relic too, his Storm Relic. But if there's additional enemies, he does increases in damage. Like, it's pretty crazy. So 256 baseline damage, but look at how much damage you can get out of this skill up. On top of that, he gives himself a defense increase, and that matters whenever you have him Chivalry 1, because anything that deals damage based on the number of enemies will also scale off of his defense. You also have the ability to get him up on his Chivalry 3 to have his defense increase by 3 instead of 1. And then there's also something right here as well. I think it's Chivalry 8. Yeah, he increases... oh, no. Sorry. Yeah, I think it was this one. Yeah, Irish Memorial deals additional damage based on defense. So right here, if there's 3 or more enemies, 100% chance to inflict invasion rate on all enemies. And I guess this scales off of defense. Like, I don't know. There's some kind of... The important thing is he deals a lot of damage, It's based on the attack and defense of his abilities, and he just pumps out damage. So if you have the Frost Relic, right, he can be a budget Bedivere for you. He is that good. Great in waves, great in favor dungeons, great in the Forbidden Dungeon. And he also just puts out, like, if you look at his Storm Relic, this is a 5-hitter with 200% attack. And you can get it up to, what is that, 160, 200 more, 400% attack. Yeah, you get the point. But anyway, guys, that's all I have. I just want to talk about some of those heroes that I think are utilized everywhere. So if you're a little strapped on, currency, stamina, all those things, and you want to know which heroes kind of just are good in a bunch of different places, I wanted to give you a list of, 8 or 9 of them here, and hopefully that helped you. Some honorable mentions, heroes like Degerit are very, very strong. He is amazing in Gorgos. He removes DOTs from the entire team, and there's a bunch of cheese comps out there that are really good with his attack gauge buffs, like increasing your entire attack gauge for all allies up to 60% if you skill this out on his relic. On his passive. Very good. Another uncommon that I think you should look into is this Maul guy. He has the highest chance for a defense decrease 2 of all the characters in the game. The only other person that has a higher chance is Morgan, and that's on her passive. But on an actual skill that you can use over and over, this guy has the highest rate, and it's 100%. He also has some decent multipliers, especially for an uncommon. And if he crits on his passive, he gives himself attack increase 2 and gives himself an attack gauge boost with a 2-turn cooldown. So those are some honorable mentions. But yeah, anyway, this video is too long. I'll get out of your hair. I hope this helped. I hope you enjoyed, and I'll catch you on the next one. See ya.